Hello, this is Gerald Jovans. Let's have another video with another example of a word which I think is quite interesting because it's based upon letters of the more complex nature of the order of letters that I have worked out. The whole workout of where letters are associated with is based upon also geometry. Also is related with dimensions. It's related with how quickly we recognize elements, and they are always as simple as possible in a way. The complexity how they combine is something else, but you can figure out how there is a whole system behind the recognition of what we hear, and also how we can visualize that. It's the most basic things are in points, 1, 2 or 3 points, into 1 or 2 or 3 places actually, and behind that is also the whole system of how we figure out a place or into a point in space via horizontal, vertical, diagonal. Again, these 3 points, these 3 angles are enough to pinpoint actually the points, and the differences of 1, 2, 3 is a whole system already in the first kind of category. Once it starts to move elsewhere, it has a delay. We have the second category where we need a little bit more adaptation and a little bit more time, and we move towards it, and that's the second category. And the last one is a whole frame of changes the whole time, where there is a system of adaptation actually visible, and that's the most complex one. And HERR, which is a German word, which is also like the Dutch word Heer, which in English is Lord, has that kind of complexity of the letter H and R from the last category, and that makes it interesting. And at the same time, I will also back up this how we interpret it with the idea of dimensions and of the geometry behind it, which I avoided until so far, but I can already give you some introduction. The HERR in a way is more related with a ruler, like the Lord is also a kind of ruler. It's not just a person or a personal projection of a person. At the same time, it's also the Lord of as an identification of something or someone that rules over a certain region. That's how we understand it. It's like, okay, this is the highest order of that has an order over, and everything that is as that lower, which is lower than the Lord, which is the top performance actually of the whole of a system of in that way. That's how we understand it. Here, on the other hand, it has that Dutch word is also like it's used for almost a little bit like gentleman and so on. Lord is much more than sir. It's a little bit like sir, but also there the association of the ruler is still there. Now, where are these letters, the H and the R, actually related with in the system that I have worked out also in my book and elsewhere? It is like this is about the kind of focus. The H and the R are the kind of focus where you have the feeling of this is ongoing the whole time. It's there the whole time, and we see just a small part of it. We are like witnesses of actually a kind of movement, and we try to figure out, okay, what's actually the definition of that movement, so that we can define what we see there. That's this kind of idea is in all the letters, is an involvement of all the descriptive parts with all these letters, in which H and R are part of it. So it's ongoing the whole time. In a way, you can say, okay, it's ongoing the whole time, and it will always be there. But it's just, we ourselves, we have just a fragment that we can see, a certain as a witness of this is into from here to there in a place, and from here to there in a timing as well, because we also will have every letter into a time and space context, and we will figure out here the last category is always like what is the time and what is the space. In this case it's a contemporary condition, but also when you move that, all these conditions, they move with it, and at the same time we still have the same definition that we're going to define in there. It's actually just the frame of the performance. As you see, the engaged performance will be defined with letters like the H and like the R. The H is in the middle there, so it is really in the middle of that performance. It is the performance. It is about this vibration of the performance, and it can describe the performance fully. So it has all the elements with which you can describe the performance, the vibration, the whole thing, like you need the H for that. And in geometry, we have the horizontal, vertical, diagonal also there as a useful tool in the space. It's actually not much more used as like a reference to find out where the point of reference is. So the middle point will be saturated. The second category, it's more like directions. The horizontal, vertical, diagonal are directions, and directions that are going away. So it is these delay factors which are also detached from a middle point, which are going somewhere. The last category, I can also use these arrows in several directions, but they are actually a bit less important. I will come to that later even more. For the case of H and R, I will also use this case what is used in the background, which are the dimensions, and also the way how we orientate ourselves into space, into time, and into space-time differently. But in all the starting points of the 1, 2, 3 rows that you have there of letters in the order of letters of complexity, they all start with a basis in the horizontal orientation. The second part is the orientation in the vertical sense, and the last one is deviating, so it is in the diagonal sense. So these are used also into the same regularity in space, in time, or in the time-space context that we are going to look into. And they only use differently in space. They use the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal just to use points in space, or the localization. The measurements of horizontal, vertical, and diagonal will be used as directions more, so that we can see, okay, in which way do we have to adapt, and where shall we see the adaptations. That's also used, but it's more used to look into, like, in that time frame, okay, where can we recognize that moment actually where there is something different. Same thing in the last category, in the space and time context. It will be, the whole thing will be an interaction where also something is different the whole time. What is that difference? For H, it will be in the vertical sense. You can see, like in the vibrations, you can see, okay, what kind of vibrations are there constantly. You can see them in the ups and downs, the going up and down of the vibrations. The whole category of the first 9 letters is based upon the horizontal plane, where everything remains the same all the time. The second one is based upon moments in the vertical sense, that you can recognize these moments where things are changing. And the last category is more actually also a bit more like in the vertical sense, that you follow something that changes the whole time. That's more or less the principle. So in these interaction arrows that you see from up and down of the H, In between that is the vibration that continues endlessly, but it can go up and down. It makes variations, and if you know these ups and downs more or less, then you can start to estimate within that two-dimensional space where actually the whole movement is, and the range of all the movements is that you can recognize and define with the letter H. It's a bit more complex indeed if I include these, but this is more correct. So it's more correct that you understand what is really going on in these categories mathematically, actually. And there it is, that frame of looking into space where things are timed, which have a range in which you can see, in which space can I see these changes the whole time. And I have actually a definition of my frame of where I can follow up the interactions. I always give the example that makes it most easy. What do we do when we recognize a bird? We just check its whole transactions and changes during a certain time frame and with a certain range of movement and behavior, so that we can recognize the bird. It's always the same kind of movements which are followed up and which we can start to recognize at each moment, and they change all the time, but we can still follow them up. And that's that diagonal sense to follow up. And the frame is like, okay, within this frame we can recognize this whole set of behaviors. I will later also give more time to the word bird as well. But let's first go to the word of the Lord then, which is in German it is HERR, and in Dutch it is HERR. The Lord. I'm going to define the Lord actually in this case, what in the sense of the German word. And of course these variations, depending on what it is related with, they can vary in height as well, and they adapt. And this is the full range, so by scope from where to where I can recognize the whole thing is then getting bigger as well. I always have repeated it as a comparison that is very easily understood with the breath of air, of oxygen, and the oxygen makes it possible that it has all the movements, all the connections possible to make it prosperous, so that you can do the whole thing, that you can have an activity, the whole thing. It's almost symbolic, like, okay, here's the space in which the whole behaviors can live freely, let's say, and have all of its movement that makes it actually fit to be itself actually completely. And this adaptation process on its way also will vary in range, so that you have a frame in which you can have a good definition. Let's say, okay, it lies within this frame. And I wrote here, like, when it deals with a need to adapt, it will find then, of course, its total space and time context, or then also that rhythm, which is then in a constant mood and variation. And that you will find the totality of the need of the circumstances that makes it possible. And that can also uphold this situation, so that it can also be an ongoing situation of it is, and I can recognize it, and it will also always be. This moving frame of focus, just like the bird, you follow up the focus here. It's in this two-dimensional frame where you can follow the time frame, and you can follow the spatial frame in which these movements fit, where you can follow up the constant interactions. And that's basically the basis also of what I have described in the dimensions as well in my book. So the first three basic dimensions are the orientations of points in space. Then you have actually, for the timings, you can see them as actually, okay, we have a setting here in space, but some things do not fit at this moment here in space directly before me, but I need to do something first. Need to have a change of mind. There has to be an adaptation at some point, and you need a time frame for it. So it will move actually certain parts in your based upon your description what it misses before you can reach it. And this missing of certain things, it's not there yet, but it might be there at some point. So in the time frame, it's that minus factor actually. So it will use also geometrically dimensions into a minus factor, not here yet, but it will move towards a point in time in a negative sense. Actually, we consider time as going forward in one line. That's because we think everything is always going forward, but it's actually compared to what happens at this point, it is more like a delay. But I can also say it as a lessened dimension, a minus part, because it's not there yet. So certain parts into these three dimensions are out of it are less than they are now, and they will become one again somewhere else at a different time. So depending on how you see it, they are not there yet, but at some point they will come there at some point. The last category is the extra dimension. So you have already your frame at this point, so you can see the thing already in space, but it changes, it moves, and there's an adaptation process. So you have to follow it up. You need then extra 3 dimensions to keep on following it up into its movement and space. So in that way, there's a plus dimension. In a way, it's counting the dimensions in the plus sense as well. So you have 3 dimensions, plus 3 dimensions, plus 3 dimensions, in total of 9 dimensions. That's also a way that you can describe them, which of course I will not do at this point. But you can understand these things from different angles and in different ways as well. But just see them in timing. It's a delay of what is there now at this point, and that can be associated with minus dimensions. With the last category, time and space together, it says it's there, but it also directs itself into a movement into 3 dimensions as well, into 3-dimensional setting that goes in to somewhere else. The definition is of course of higher dimensions, because the possibilities are infinitely how many things could happen, but it's limited, and these limitations in movement, what happens, what changes, are defined also by letters. And this will be one of the examples that I explain in that way. And so before I will go further with the description of the word HERR, I will go a bit deeper into how can we imagine this, because until here it's theory. Let's show it to you then, how the first 3 dimensions are seen when we use these horizontal, vertical, diagonal as points, as references to find a point of reference. Like you see it in the cross point of references, you will find the object or the description of choice into a physical sense, into a 1, 2, 3 dimensions. Will be explained later. The next one, the adaptation, will be then of course 4, 5, and 6 dimensions in total, but I will prefer to describe them as minus dimensions, because that's what's missing. So before you have a full perspective into 3 dimensions, some parts are missing, and this missing part you can define as well, and you can see, okay, it seems to be something is already in evolution. It prepares itself to become at a certain point. And that's something you can see in a physical sense as well, which I'm not going to talk about today. And the last ones are then, of course, 7, 8, and 9th dimension are about the extra dimensions you need to describe them. But I promised that I had to show you a visualization, which I will do then. So within the full square of let's say the possible focuses, which I will limit to try to measure them within this cube, will be a cross point of references where I will find my point of or starting point. It will be about starting. I will find my starting point to focus upon with this cross point of, here in this case, a horizontal and a vertical, or the sound of T, actually, which I usually associate that imagination, or imagining or associating it with that image with the letter T. And that's where you can find the thing now and here. If there's a delay, okay, these delays can be also in 3 dimensions. These delays, one of the delays that we can imagine is a delay in a vertical sense. So it's not there now, but what's that vertical sense? And in a way, it sounds like it doesn't have that peak value of notification yet. So that's the kind of delay with the letter A. That describes actually the letter A well. It has that peak value, which is not there yet now at this point, because there's a delay. And this delay in peak value also gives you an opportunity actually to say, you know already it is about a peak value, and you just have to look for where are these peak values. So as soon as you know where they are, you also know at the same time in the time setting when they appear, when they are there. That's the way how to use this mathematical idea into the sense of how you project them into reality, how we can use them in the real world. The last this last thing, the is something we can use in our word, of course. So we had this frame of vibrations and so on, and I already told you it is possible that one of these vibrations is different, and we have the full frame. The E symbolizes that idea completely. It actually says, okay, now there is an uplifted value in it somewhere as well, and only then and only when there is that uplifted value, we have the full frame. So that's the point of reach that we have, actually the full frame of, that's the meaning of what I want to say, is defined from H to E by this uplifted value or uplifted peak value. And how do I see actually in general the last category of H and R? So I wanted to have an example also how we use it, how we can see this in general. In general, it is in the first category, it's just one cube of space, steady space. That's the steady space. It's all what you need to define physical things. You have a steady idea of space, and a steady idea of here is the point of reference. There it is. In timing, doesn't exist, this steady space. No, we have an unsteady space, and that because there are timings involved and the delays involved. In this case, there's always a movement, and this movement can be in all 3 dimensions as well. And it is always about a comparison to 2 sorts of focuses. With this uplifted value or peak value, we have actually one space where it is, and the other space, when we focus upon that as a middle point, for instance, it moves up to that point. So we also have 2 spaces, 2 different spatial references for the time reference that we need. In this case, it will be moved to a different place also, naturally, but the only thing we know is that it is about timing at that point. We wait for that timing to happen in that sense. While in the last category, it's about time and space together. So it's a time and space context. It is moving in all directions, and it's possible to move in all directions, and we follow it up. We follow it up of what is moving. We follow up the full movement. Here, I design it as a diagonal sense because that's the most easy thing to simplify it as well, just like the vertical movement is also a very easy thing to look over, like, okay, when will it happen? At certain point it will happen. There will be a new peak value where I will have it. In this case, like you say that you just recognize the right moment. The moment is somewhere else and it will be there. Here it is now. Now I follow all the changes and I move the cube actually along. It will actually move along. The background, you had that first cube which has had its vibrations possible as well. And if I follow it up, I might move to a different vibration as well. That is quite possible. I can move this thing up with me. But I will have to follow up the changes, what it will do. Basically, I also compared it very often, these three kinds of focuses, as the focus in space where you only need one focus, or focus towards space. In timing, you always need two focuses, wherever the second eye is. In this case, it's up in the vertical. There will be changes visible. Actually, the comparison between these two focal points. And in the third option, you need actually, you can only have three comparisons to make the vibration, to make the definition of in which direction everything is changing the whole time. You have, within this frame of three focuses, you can define the kind of change which is happening. It seems to be complicated, but actually the reality, how quickly we recognize these things, goes more simple actually than if you would really translate it into mathematics. That's another thing. But what happens then in the difference of our experience? Well, in space it is, you have the experience like, okay, it's now, it's here, we know it. With the delay factor, is okay, it's not now here, so because there's the delay. And the third option, there's no delay actually from what you're seeing anymore, because you would go back to the spatial reference, but the spatial reference itself moves actually. And we constantly need a follow-up, constantly need to adapt our focus towards it, that it is created within the full three dimensions where we have that follow-up as well. But now let's go to the comparison to HERR. We know also already we start from a basic frequency with H as well. We have that as the first idea with that H, which could go, in this case with a uplifted value. It also automatically creates an uplifted frequency. It goes almost towards a higher frequency to see the same things on a higher level in a certain way. From H to H, it is seen actually at the same time. This is different. Something is different there. That's our experience also. And because there's a jump almost towards that higher value. In that case, you could also say, like, but how can we reach that higher value? Because the only thing that it says so far with he is, okay, here we have a higher value. And how can we reach that? How we connect to that, you can also say, and that's the next letter. R is about making a connection. So you could say, okay, I go make a connection for my smaller or lower frequency, and during the time of adaptations of my vision also, I will make a new connection. I renew my connection. But it actually doesn't say much more like, okay, I go to connect some point or another, or I'm able to connect at some point to a higher level. It doesn't say how you should do that. How can you uplift yourself to this higher level? It doesn't say that, but it still says there is a connection towards that higher connection. But before we continue and express it a bit better, what will happen with the double R at the end, let's also have a quick view upon the idea of the bird which you follow in the sky. Also there they have the I and the R in the middle from the third category, which also defines actually that there is a definition involved, a definition of adaptation. There is an adaptation, and what's the adaptation about is surrounded by the description how it starts and where it really is seen the results, how it starts in B and how it really has where you can see where it happens, where that happens all the time in the last letter D. It is also about movement, where the adaptation, the sort of adaptation, the plus dimension in that way, is described by these letters. What could this be? We are in these higher dimensions of adaptations, these 3 dimensions extra that you have in which you can adapt. There can be a horizontal line where you constantly want to have the things in a continuation and remain the same. Have an adaptation of movements in the green arrow, where you can move towards certain positions or to certain activities or to certain points where you say, okay, this is relevant, here it is significant, or you can adapt also into the red arrow and adapt to circumstances even more. These 3 options, the 1, 2, 3 rule, is something within these 3 dimensions which will happen. That it will be adapting towards that field of reference, and within that field of reference of adaptations, there you will recognize the bird, and the bird with all these changes will remain to be defined by the letters of bird. And how do we see that? We know that we also have that simplification of how we can say, okay, this is the bird, that's how we see it in the sky, that's how it moves. It's like as if we can derive it to that connecting to R from within. The descriptions of the letters will help us a bit better. The B is from the first category, is always about physically going beyond your own limits. It could also mean, okay, I want to breach my space, my own limits of space. I is always about, that's from the third category, to find out a selection mostly from within. You have a full range of possibilities. Now I will make a selection that works. This is the only selection that will work. With the letter R, I connect to it, and I connect adaptively also from here. Conclusion is the letter D. D is from the second category. It means it is about adaptations in time, adaptations that are not done yet, but at a certain stage it will move to the next stage where it will do the move as well. The I and the R from inwardly are the way how to connect it, how to adapt to it. As if it's a constant selective adaptation to all the things that are needed in the environment, adapting to it via that feedback system that also defines its context and also its need for adaptation. It's all in these letters available. Try to see how the letters are associated from these positions onwards, and you will gradually learn to understand it more and more. Here I go a bit quickly over it. But let's go back to HERR. HERR is then also with R making a connection from the first vibration towards the second one. And then with the uplifting, go from the uplifting towards that second one, so that I really realize, no, this is about an uplifted value. And as soon as we can uplift ourselves to that level, then we can also become acquainted with it, understand it, go towards that understanding, go uplift also even ourselves towards that understanding. But that only works via constant adaptation to what we see and notice, and really deal with what we notice and adapt to it constantly. So that with a double R then as well, it will also work that according to that higher rhythm, we can keep that also in continuation. The things that we sense of like, okay, these might be of a higher order, I will respect that, and I will keep to respect that. I keep to try to react as quickly as I can to it, that I also have that higher vibration, not my own lower vibration, that will be reflected, and people will recognize that if it is your lower reflection, or it is an inspiration from a higher reflection, which you actually cannot really explain well, but that you can sense like, okay, here these vibrations work. If they do not work, it will lower yourself down. This constant adaptation will have to maintain a certain form of attention, so that you get that maintenance of order. Only then it will work to have that into a continuation. Compared to persons, you have that person which can follow this up. You can see, okay, what do I have here? HERR is on a higher level. It's a person which lives on a higher level. On a physical frame, we compare this order to men, which seems to be like, okay, there seems to be, if we compare it to a man's position, it seems to be of a higher order. This HERR seems to have a higher order, a higher rhythm. And it also sees these things from a higher level of order. And if it succeeds indeed, if it has that position, and it can continue this higher level of order to have also then a higher vibration that brings more prosperous things, then we know it is also a reflection of the ruler of this. It rules over you. It brings in the higher rules. And the word heersen or rule is the Dutch word, which is a continuation of the word heersen. So it says, it creates actually this situation, yes, the Lord can rule. That's basically what it says. Heer or HERR or Lord is expressed with in that way, in a very good way. That makes you also understand, okay, we are dealing here with someone or something or someone who presents this from a higher order, so we can call him HERR or Heer or Lord. It's not an illusionary title or something that is opposed upon you. No, it only works like it's a ruler of things. It's a ruler. You even have this word, the Lord of a concept or something, is also like, okay, it reflects actually what happens within this range, and it can also reflect the whole thing, what happens within this range, and can make connections to it, that it can reflect itself to it. And that's the meaning of that word. I hope this was clear enough. I also plan to have a bit more explanation about the word bird in the next video. I hope you enjoyed at least this one. There's some books to prepare you, some web page to prepare you, some Facebook page where you can browse back, and there's also this web page is actually with previous video links as well. I hope you might also subscribe to this video channel. Feel free to do so. Thanks again for watching. Bye.